Hello everybody, thanks for joining me. Today I'm going to be using some Braided Marabou to make a lovely little Damsel Nymph pattern. In the vise I've got a Hanak H200 barbless wet fly hook, size 10. The thread I'm going to be using is UTC 70 in olive. We're going to use some eyes on this fly, and you can either use some nylon ones or some pre-made ones. I'm going to use nylon and we'll show you that later. We're going to need some good high quality marabou with some nice long fibres for this. For the thorax cover I'm going to use some grey brown antron yarn, and for the thorax and legs I'm going to use some nice long CDC feathers. So let's make the eyes first of all, using a pair of hemostats here, and I'm going to take a length of nylon monofilament. This is nice thick stuff. I actually use the butt ends of my old tapered leaders, and I'm going to snip off even lengths on both sides of the hemostats. I'm going to come in with a lighter, and I'm just going to hold the flame next to the nylon rather than directly in the flame, which would just set it on fire. Here I'm just trying to melt it back towards the hemostats. And I'm going to do it again on the other side, and this makes a really nice pair of natural looking brownish clear damsel eyes. It's a really nice effect. Make sure not to breathe the smoke. Do this in a well ventilated room, it's not very good for you. So what I've done here is I've taken 3 plumes of marabou and I've tied them together by the tips using some thread, and I've then reinforced that with a little dab of UV resin which I've cured. I've moistened the plumes here, makes them a little easier to handle, and I've secured them end on in my vise. Now what I'm doing here is I'm going to braid them hand over hand in a 3-strand plait, working all the way down. This is quite fiddly and it's the most time consuming part of tying this pattern, but it makes for a really lovely supple body. Now I'm coming up to the end of the plumes here, so it's getting a little bit harder, but you can see how the size has increased. It's built in a natural taper. That's about as far as we're going to be able to get, so I'm going to come in with my hackle pliers and pinch off the ends to stop the whole thing from unravelling. Now we can undo the vise, and as you see it makes a really nice flexible supple body that behaves wonderfully in the water. It looks ever so natural. Moving back to the head-on view, I've got my hook back in the vise, so I'm going to cast on my thread just behind the eye. Carry it down a few wraps to secure, and trim off the excess. I'm going to take it down the length of the hook shank to about where the barb would be on a barbed hook. And here's that plume of marabou that we braided together earlier. Being very careful not to let it unravel, I'm going to pinch it together and make a few good firm loops to secure it down. Let's carry the excess forward, make a nice little smooth underbody, and trim off the ends. Going to secure down the head end there, and you can see here it's nice and in the midline and nice and flexible still. For the body, I'm going to use some more marabou. This is some nice long straight plumes again, and again we're going to tie these in by the tip. So pinch and loop, and tie them right back to the base of the tail. Going to secure down the tips here, and then using my rotary I'm just going to make a few wraps on the body, and this gives a really nice tapered effect and helps blend that tail in to the rest of the fly. Again, make some wraps to secure, come in and trim off the excess. Now I've taken the eyes that we made earlier, make a couple of loops over, spin them around to be perpendicular to the hook shank, and I'm happy with the position, so we're going to make some figure 8 wraps over the top and lock everything down nicely. For the thorax cover I'm going to use a doubled over length of antron yarn. I'm going to make a couple of loops, fold it back on itself and carry it back. You can see this is going to make a nice wide sparkly thorax cover. Now I'm spinning my thread flat here, and this is 2 feathers worth of CDC that I've loaded into a Petitjean magic clip. Now that the thread's flattened, I'm going to be able to split it, and we're going to insert the magic clip of CDC and load our loop with those CDC fibres. Now I'm spinning up the thread to secure everything, and this makes a lovely little CDC dubbing brush. Just spinning everything tight. And I'm happy with that, so I'm going to come in and I'm going to start dubbing the thorax and the body, preening back the feathers as we go. I like using CDC, it's got a very natural action in the water, it's very supple and very almost greasy when it's wet. Now I'm going to come in and tie down the thorax cover, a couple of loops over the top, a couple underneath to secure, and that's everything added, so I'm going to come in with my whip finisher and tie off at the head of the fly. Trim the excess, and I'm going to trim off the thorax cover. And there you have it, that's my braided tail marabou nymph. Got a really lovely action, trout go wild for it and love nipping at the tail. Give it a go, and thanks for watching.